Now, the government is reportedly ready to help in the search for the submersible, the Titan, that vanished off the coast of southeastern Canada. The small vessel carrying 5 passengers, including the pilot, took off 3 days ago to explore the wreckage of the Titanic, which lies nearly 2.5 miles at the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean. To put that into context, that is the length of roughly 40 Elizabeth Towers, otherwise known as Big Ben. The Titan lost contact with its research base approximately 1 hour and 45 minutes into its descent, which is meant to take a total of 2 hours to reach the bottom of the ocean. The vessel has 96 hours of emergency oxygen, which is 4 days' worth, and experts warn they may only have a couple of days left worth of supply. The 5 missing people include British businessmen who were bolted in from the outside of the vessel and would need outside help to escape. We can only imagine how terrifying that experience must be. But I now have with me somebody who has been to the wreckage of the Titanic and has had an experience of how this operates. Daily Mail journalist Martin Phillips. Martin, thank you very much for joining me.
You're welcome, Jake.
You went down 2.5 miles to the ocean bed to see the Titanic. As you went down, what were the conditions like? What was it like being inside one of these small submersibles? It
was fairly nerve-wracking, but you're sort of claustrophobia and the exhilaration of what you're likely to see tends to mask the fear that is there in the background because you know the dangers you're going into.
And you go down and it gets completely dark once you're a few fathoms down, and at that point blackness descends and you just keep on going down and down, and it takes 2 hours of sinking.
In our case, yes, the Russian pilot of our 3-man vessel put the lights on for us to see the sea life around us as it started to get dark, but obviously want to conserve the battery, so he turned that off pretty quickly, and we were in darkness just listening to the echoing ping of the sonar as we sank for 2 hours.
And then you got to the seabed and you saw the Titanic. That must have been absolutely amazing.
Unbelievable. Our pilot put on the lights as soon as we got to the bottom, and there's a lunar-like landscape, and we motored across that, came across a wall of black, which we had no idea was the side of Titanic, and he rose the submersible up until we reached within touching distance of the bow rail of Titanic. That's where we arrived.
And are there any sea creatures down there, or is it too deep for
there are a few colourless starfish and ratfish, but not a great deal.
And what did you have in terms of emergency procedures? What were the people in the current submersible, what will they be going through in terms of emergency options?
I hope they have a little more technology than we did, but I don't suppose it's very different. The emergency procedures we had is that because it's an oxygen-enriched atmosphere in the sub, we were in fire retardant overalls, but we were told that would perhaps keep us alive for an extra couple of seconds. And beyond that, we were told that if we had an emergency at the bottom, the pilot's only real recourse was to drop the battery, the heavy battery, which acted as ballast, and we would hopefully float to the surface. But we were one of two of only 5 submersibles in the world that could reach that deep at that time, and it's not much better now, so you know not much help is coming.
Right, and so once you're at the bottom, the engine that is run on the battery, there's no other source of power to move the submersible?
No.
And so it would be sheer buoyancy that would get you back,
that's
back
what
to the
your
top.
hope would be.
And in terms of communications, clearly this has lost contact with the surface. What type of communication did you have?
I believe it was similar, just pinging text to the ship at the surface from which the submersibles were launched.
And what do you think can have happened from your experience? What's the most likely form of problem that would mean that contact could be lost?
I don't know. One hopes that it's a communication thing and nothing catastrophic has happened to the submersible. But that still means that before they can even attempt a rescue, which is difficult, the rescuers have to find it.
And when you went down, you saw the Titanic straight away, but I was listening to somebody else who'd been down on different outlet who said they only saw the Titanic for 20 minutes because they had to find it in the dark. So knowing precisely where you are must be quite difficult.
I guess so. The Russians who took us down had transponders on the bottom in 3 places, so they could triangulate exactly where the wreck was. And as I say, our pilot brought us onto the wreck right on the bow,
went straight,
almost immediately.
Went straight to
we
it.
spent 4 hours on the bottom.
And did you realise what the risks were when you went down? I'm sure they were made clear to you, but that's slightly different from realising them, that it's quite easy to be bold when you don't know how awful things can be.
They were spelled out in advance, but I think it's only when you climb into that claustrophobic tiny little capsule and the hatch shuts that it starts to dawn on you how serious this is, and that's a long way from the terror of something actually going wrong, which I fear is the case. Yeah.
And because of the technology, the space is very, very small. So the 5 people, it's standing room only, there are no chairs. So in terms of it being claustrophobic, it is really claustrophobic.
I guess so. We were in a 3-man sub, so just the pilot and bunk each side for 2 passengers staring out of a 7-inch thick, tiny porthole.
Well, let's hope the people currently on board safely get back as safely as you did. But thank you so much for coming in to see me this afternoon.